So we have poster paper taped onto each table, split up into different amounts of boxes depending on what part of the problem they were going to work on. So one problem had a scenario where they have to split food up among 6 boxes, so their poster would be split up into 6 different squares. We also have a key that we made. So actually, I shouldn't even say that. It was a piece of paper that said the word key on it to encourage them to use the few markers that we gave them to make a key. Like the blue marker is going to stand for the milk. So if I write 2.4 kilograms in blue, I know that it's 2.4 kilograms of milk. Just to minimize the time they spend writing the same thing over and over and over again, and to help them kind of give them a tool to categorize their thinking.
So the lesson came from the connected mathematics curriculum, and we're in, like I said, it's the bits and pieces?
Comparing bits and pieces
workbook section of that. So we did use a lot of that. We also kind of typed part of the lesson up on a Google Doc, and we just printed it out so that students would have the blank. So that was kind of like our accommodation for the students, was we gave them a piece of paper that, said like visually like 10 boxes, here's the items you have, and then it said like each of the 10 boxes will have blank kilograms of cheddar cheese, and it just allowed them to kind of like look at it. Another one of the things that, we use whiteboards all the time. We try to use those a lot. So like I put up like a table as so that one of the groups could use it to organize their information. So basically like the help that we were giving them was more encouraging them to look at the information visually using the markers and the chart papers, and then having having the lesson come alive through printing out the sheets so that they could really see each part of it.
And we discussed the use of possibly using manipulatives. Like we have a whole set of foam blocks and little tiles, and we thought of even like little paper cutouts of oranges and things. But then we realized that actually would probably be counterproductive, because the nature of the problem is that each answer was going to end up being like a decimal of, for example, 2.65 kilograms of oranges in each box. And having like 26 oranges, or like 26 cubes that were to represent each 1 kilogram of oranges, we thought they would start thinking, oh, there's 26 oranges, when in reality there's 26 kilograms of oranges. And then how do I represent 2.65? If I put 1 in each box, I have 3 left over. What do I do with those? Do I cut them up in little pieces? What does that little piece represent? So we thought that there might be some benefits to that, as like a check your work. Oh, there are 2 in each box and I have a few left over, so 2.65 makes sense. That's when that would have come in handy. But we thought that with the amount of time we had and the decimals that they had to be working with, it just didn't make sense to incorporate manipulatives in that way.
I think the goal was to get them to think visually, and to get them to like feel like they were actually participating in a food drive instead of doing some problem out of their math book. Whenever possible, we try to make it like kind of come alive for them, at least so that they can be thinking about different materials. And so the markers was an idea Kata had when we kind of decided, manipulatives probably wouldn't work, because then they'd be like tempted to find the LCM, and then they wouldn't be able to find it, and it would incite frustration amongst the students. So,
Or they also, in previous problems where we have had manipulatives, they've said like, oh, each person gets 2 and there's 3 left over, and they just ignore the 3 that didn't go out. So we wanted to avoid that also.
Yeah, definitely. And when looking at curriculums, she found connected mathematics to be the most relevant and make the most connections, obviously connected mathematics, between like real world situations. And so she encourages us to follow the curriculum. That was a new experience for me, because I had to come from this place of distrust with curriculums, and like it's better to like make your own. But Buffy kind of said, like, why would you work your butt off making our curriculum? Why instead wouldn't you start with the curriculum and work your butt off differentiating the curriculum in order to fit your needs? And so my opinion since I came to SEEKS and started using the curriculum is that makes so much sense. it's my second year teaching with the curriculum, and it's so much easier your second year. It's really hard to internalize and to, especially co-teaching 6 subjects, to internalize one curriculum. It's very, very difficult. But having this be my second year with it, it's the lessons make more sense, and we can more, I feel like I can help Kata more succinctly go through it and be like, yeah, I think this one would be helpful right now. I don't think we need this one. So
yeah, oftentimes in our planning meetings, she'll say, I remember that lesson from last year. I remember this issue happening with all the students, or I remember this common confusion, or I remember that ended up kind of being a waste of time, and that this one would be more suited to our students at this moment where they are. So that's been really helpful. And the lesson, it is a curriculum that kind of writes its lessons it's in inquiry-based curriculum, so that our students, the structure tends to be that the students are posed a problem, and it's not like, this is how you do this mathematical process or equation, and now you practice it. It's more like, this is the problem, how are you going to solve it? What do we need to know? And they come up with the questions, the follow-up questions that they need to ask each other in their groups. And then they go through that process of, okay, we need to know this. How do we find the LCM? Oh, we learned that before. Okay, let's pull that knowledge in. And so I think this was a good example. This lesson was a good example of what this book is about. Because some tend to be a little bit more just rote practice of like drawing number lines and putting the numbers on number lines. This one was a solid example of what the book aims to be in its inquiry-based approach.
We also like the way the book it's easy to differentiate. There's some pretty meta understandings that can come from some of the lessons, but there's also a way that our students with IEPs can access the book at many levels. So having an inclusion classroom with, God, how many? 8? 9?
Yeah.
I think like around 9 students with IEPs and 2 with 504s. It's imperative that we have a curriculum where kids can access it at different levels. And this has been a curriculum that, it's not perfect by any means, but it's a great starting point for our instruction. So the interesting thing is that Kata gets this cool experience because she teaches this one co-taught class with me, like a crazy woman, and we're trying to figure out this. And then the next day, in the relative calm waters of non-inclusionville, teaches the class to a mainly, a pretty much gen ed, although still mixed ability group.
Right.
And so Kata gets this cool situation where she gets a chance to redo the lesson every week, right? Because she teaches it twice. So that question is one for her. It's more like PTSD for me sometimes. I'm just like, okay, that's done. Let's move on.
That's interesting. Yeah, you never get to revisit it.
No.
Yeah. If I would change anything about the materials, I don't know. I'm trying to think about tomorrow after the long day. I didn't see the students use the posters to push their discussions that much further during the discussion. It was more like, oh, you've all done your thinking, now transfer it to the poster.
Kind of like an organizing information instead of a pushing
processing
thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because we presented it in there's only one marker and it's marker, so you need to be totally certain before you write it down, or if that's just because we told them you have to have your work in your notebook and that was their priority because they know that they do go back to it and they get their notebooks checked, and that's kind of, they have more ownership over their notebooks. So I'm not sure. That's one of the questions I'm going to ask myself tonight is what instructions will I give around the poster and how much will I push it? I still plan to put it out there the same way, but I'm not sure if I will require it or if I'll just kind of let it be there and see what they do with it, because it tends to also be the groups of students in that class tend to jump in more quickly and therefore have more time to have these discussions amongst themselves of should we use it? Maybe we should. And there's still a wide range of ability, but I wonder if they will take just the poster being there and kind of run with it to help them however they need in each group.
Well, I hope they made that connection to the Seeks Toiletries drive, and kind of, I'm hoping that we'll have some students now volunteer to like kind of be that mathematical kind of thought behind organizing the toiletries for the Seeks drive. I had this idea later on that how cool would it be if we could have some of our students do like an update on like the toiletries drive by separating it into and saying, 67% of the toiletries that we've collected so far are toothpaste. So we need some more baby wash and lotion and shampoo and conditioner. So like that would be, I was kind of thinking like, how could we continue the momentum of this? But I feel like it was relevant and meaningful. I also thought today was a great, we had two really great examples of thinking systematically, which is kind of like I saw them organizing information in lots of different ways, which is very relevant and connects across all subjects. And then also collaborating productively. And I feel like the work that they did in collaboration today is really relevant to their peer relationships, is very relevant to their future, what they're going to be doing in the real world, and I'm hoping that they can take those skills.
There's also, Meg, those two things, thinking systematically and collaborating productively, are two sustainability skills it seeks, and another one is communicating powerfully. And I think that the goal was, if they had time at the end, to share out with each other and to provide that opportunity to communicate powerfully between groups. But I think I heard a lot of examples of students communicating their ideas powerfully, especially that back corner table, who just kind of ran with it and were put together for a reason, but they were all students who kind of tend to like that mathematical search that not that other students don't. I don't want to say that. But anyway, I heard that there, and that was really cool to see them vouching for their ideas, and they had a interesting discussion about where to round the decimal. What do we do with this endless decimal that it's not 0.6 repeating, it's just this jumble of numbers. And I forgot where I was going. Oh, meaningful.
I had a great conversation with Levi around that too, because he was like, I was like, oh, let me show you, like, here's the repeating sign. And he was like, well, let me show you. I actually like doing the 3 dots at the end. And I was like, okay, that sounds great. Great, good. Glad we're on the same page.
Advocating for his own mathematical choices.
Awesome. Like, great, go with it. If you want to do the 3 dots, more power to you, man.
I heard something cool at every table like that.
Just definitely.
Every single table had some moment of talking to each other and either coming, like, all agreeing, which is always nice as a table when you're like, yeah, we all think the same thing. Like, we got the answer and we have like this confidence in our math, or having healthy debates. We love that, and I think that is meaningful. And another way that this is meaningful for them is just to kind of answer that question: when does it make sense to use decimals? If I'm going to go to the grocery store, I'm not going to say, "Hey, Mom, like, this is only
give me $1.50.
Right?
Give me half of a 20,
or $1.75. Well, that's a bad example. $1.03. Like, how do you, that sounds awkward coming out. So or when you go to a pizza place, like, oh, I'd like 0.65 of a slice. Like, no, it doesn't make sense. We want them to gain this fluency using mathematical terms that in their own lives every single day that they use for a reason, and not just kind of taking that for granted that, oh, we're never going to use this.
I also saw some respect for learning styles. Like, I went to check in with the table and they were like, oh, we're ready to get started on the poster. And then Abby was like, oh, I'm still working. And they were kind of like, that's okay, Abby, we'll get started with the poster. There was just this respect for the different levels that they're at. And I don't know if that's unique to our inclusion classroom. I definitely think that's something that kids in inclusion classes definitely have, that respect for the different speed of learning, and they have that knack for explaining to each other too. So I definitely saw that, which is a relevant and meaningful skill too. So
I saw that at Karis's table with Kaya was drawing Swiss cheese in one way and Karis was drawing it in another way, and ideally you're not wasting your time drawing little circles to make the cheese look like Swiss cheese.
But they had Lehua at their table, so
right. But if that's something that you're gonna feel more connected to this problem, and you're gonna understand that the 4 beautiful little Swiss cheeses you drew,
even though it was cheddar,
Oh, there was Swiss cheese for one problem though. Was that one cheddar?
I'm not sure. They had cheddar,
Oh,
but that's
well,
fine. I didn't really
That's a
feel
lesson
like,
for another day.
yeah, I was like, that's a real world one. We'll get to that one day.
But it shows that they're like, oh, this is something I see in the grocery store. and this is
Invested in
something
it.
that-
We
yeah.
see more engagement that way. So.
Yeah.